Jesus, a Novel, Chapter 3, Outed. Our thoughts were jarred by the sound of screeching tires, followed by a crunch and screams. We all ran out the front door. It was dark by now, but I could see a young girl, 18 or 19, lying on the road, a sizable pool of blood already collecting. Her left arm looked quite mangled, but it was her head that had taken the worst of it. Blood was coming from her mouth and ears. Her skull had to be shattered. The driver, a middle-aged man, pretty shaken, started babbling as he stumbled out of the car. I didn't see her. She, all of a sudden, she was just there. I couldn't help it. He went over to her and knelt down beside her. He picked up her right hand and turned it over. I saw the number on the back of her hand. She was a slave. BY-6347931. The driver let out a huge sigh of relief, went back to his car, got in, and drove away. When others saw this, the crowd thinned significantly. She was just a slave. Ambulances aren't called for slaves unless their owner specifically requests it. There would be a star after the BY if the owner had approved care. It's a way of organizing societal refuse. I sometimes think our government thought of this as a convenient way to take out the trash. Until 2 years ago, Pete had been one of the contractors for the government, tattooing new members of the Brotherhood of the Yoked when they were purchased. It actually was a fairly lucrative contract for him, but somewhere into his 200th stamping, he felt sick to his stomach and decided he couldn't be part of this dehumanizing process anymore. I saw Pete reach for his cell phone to call for help. Jesus, seeing what Peter was doing, reached over and signaled for him to put his phone away. "It's okay, I'll pay for her," growled Peter, angry that no one was stepping up, especially Jesus. Jesus looked at him and calmly said, "I've got this," again motioning for Peter to put his phone away. Peter, not sure why, slid his phone back into his pocket. Jesus sat down in the street beside the girl, lifted her unconscious head, and placed it in his lap. He was talking to her, but I couldn't make out what. He caressed her face as he talked, his jeans and hands now covered in her blood. It sounded like he was praying, to whom I'm not sure. Then he ran his hand across her disfigured arm, and it straightened. He cupped the gash on her head, and it stopped bleeding. He inhaled and blew on her face a long, slow breath. Her eyes opened. Pete unknowingly took a big step backwards, as if protectively backing away from a flame. He bumped into me, but didn't notice. I looked around him, not wanting to take my eyes off of what was happening. I heard Peter whisper, "What in the hell?" And he trailed off. James and John looked at Peter without words, asking the same litany of questions. "Did you see that? What just happened? How did he do that? Who is he?" I saw a lady in the crowd wearing a badge for one of the local TV stations, KLMN, the NBC affiliate. Under her breath, she said into her phone, "Get a camera down here, now." The crowd had thinned and was growing again. You could hear questions wrapped in whispers traveling outwardly in concentric circles. Jesus looked at Peter and me and said, "Help me get her into your shop." We did as we were told. I took hold of her arm gently, thinking it would be tender to the touch. She seemed to feel nothing. We got her inside onto Pete's big chair. There was still a lot of blood, but it was drying. The girl was pretty chatty. Maybe it was the adrenaline. Her name was Maddie. I could see she was beautiful, even through the blood matted in her hair. She was 18 years old and had been a slave since 14 when her mother abandoned her. After living on the streets for 3 months, Maddie opted to sell herself into slavery in order to survive. Without saying anything, I began checking her over while they were talking. Maybe it was a habit from working in the ER, or maybe I was trying to convince my mind of what I had seen. From what I saw on the street, this girl must have been dead. The conversation faded back in as she was telling us that she was owned by the governor of our state. She hated him. She hated her life. It almost seemed that she was secretly wishing Jesus had left her in the street to die. I turned her head and asked her if it hurt. "No, so what exactly happened out there?" she asked. Peter ignored her question, deciding it was time to ask the big ones. He began very subdued, almost tentatively. "Okay, so Jesus." The way he said his name, I could tell he was thinking, "Is that even your real name?" He continued, "What just happened out there? Really?" He paused. "Who are you? How did you..." His question just sort of stopped mid-sentence. Jesus looked at each of us and could tell we all wanted the answers to the very same questions. He began very deliberately. "I'm not completely who you think I am. My father sent me here on business. Your world, our world, is messed up, and it's not going to fix itself without a rather comprehensive reboot." Pause. I am the reboot, the spiritual surrogate of sorts, sent to regenerate humanity and bring us back together. None of us said anything. Peter suddenly stood to his feet, paced back and forth a couple of times, then angrily walked up to Jesus, put his finger in his face, about to say something, but he stopped. He paced a couple more times, then stopped again, inhaled and exhaled loudly. He looked at Jesus. "This is messed up, man. I don't know who you are. I don't know what just happened. I don't... He paused. "I've got to think about this." He turned and walked out the front door of his shop and just kept walking. The brothers looked at me. John started to ask a question, but Jesus stopped him. "I think it might be best if I get away by myself for a while." He turned and looked at Maddie. "I'm glad you're still here." He looked He took her right hand and gently rubbed his fingers across the number. "In fact, I would love to have you join my tribe. I have big plans for you, Maddie." She looked at me as if I was supposed to interpret everything for her. Jesus kept going. "I'm going to get away and paint. Putting a brush to canvas helps me work through things. Therapy. I'll meet you all at the Neon Cathedral tomorrow night. We'll begin our work then." He turned to walk out the front door, but there was a TV truck pulling up, a cameraman and reporter getting out. Jesus altered his course and headed for the back door. Before walking out, he turned to us and said, "I'm serious about wanting you to be part of what I have come to do. It's going to be hard," he paused, "but it's going to be good." He smiled broadly and left. James had locked the front door to Pete's shop, and the reporter was now banging on the door, wanting to ask questions. John looked at us and said, "Okay, I'll go out and talk to them, but what's our story?" We looked at him. No input. He continued, "Okay, nobody wrote down Maddie's number, right? So they won't know it was her. I'll tell them Pete will be out later to give them the details, that it was just an accident and the girl is going to be okay." We nodded. James told Maddie and I to head out the back door while John was talking to the reporter. Others were talking to the reporter as well. There were plenty of people who had witnessed the event and were happy to grab their 15 seconds of on-camera fame to tell all. We slid out the back. I gave Maddie my jacket to cover up all the blood on her shirt. I asked her when she had to be back at the governor's house for work. She said not till 5 in the morning. We stopped by Susie's for a drink. She stayed outside and we found a place in the dark on the patio. I could see her fidgeting with the back of her hand, and I knew why. All slaves had a chip inserted under the skin on the back side of their right hands. Slave owners could track their whereabouts, their blood alcohol level, and a whole list of other things, including vital health statistics. I asked Maddie what she was thinking. She said, "The governor, if he wants to, could see that I was dead for a while tonight. How will I explain that?"